Hello, I'm Richard Burton from the Richard Burton Art Centre here at Bempton on the Yorkshire coast. And a question for you. Do you struggle with the winter light and catching street scenes with that strong shadows and light that comes with them? If you do, I've got the solutions. And not only that, we've got a lot of people who've been emailing us, asking us about street scenes, and now is the time to do it. The sun is low, the shadows are long, and it's a real opportunity to get the most out of watercolour. So let's have a go. And before we start, I must not forget to mention that we've got our free watercolour guide, which has got 5 steps in it, gets you into watercolour. If you're new to watercolour or you're coming back to watercolour, it's ideal. It's in the link below, it's just free. And grab yourself a copy, print it off, and use it when you're painting. It will just get you inspired back into watercolour. Also, we've got our new beginners watercolour course. We've got a lot of positive feedback from it and people are really enjoying it. It's there for you if you want to develop your skills, get into watercolour, get into the structured plan that we have for you in watercolour. It's there and it's in the link below. Right, now let's get into the painting. Okay, so we've got the paper on the board, taped on. It's 450 gram not surface paper, so it's a much heavier paper. We're going to give this a try today. It's the first time I've used it, so we'll see how it goes. I've drawn the picture in, and as you can see, it's into the light. It's a early morning January scene in York, a street scene, looking into the light. I've got the buildings, I've got the verticals, I've got those vanishing points, which are so important to make sure I've got my eye going into my picture. The important thing for me really is this light and shadow taking me through the picture into this highlight area here. The figures are going to be play a role in leading my eye in, and yet also project these wonderful shadows, which is going to be really crucial. And I'm also wanting to catch this light and dark on the buildings. But for me, firstly, I just want to draw it in. I'm not overly putting too much detail in, but at the same time, I want to ensure that I get the angles, I get the heights of the buildings proportionately, and hopefully it comes out about right. Okay, so we're going to start with setting the mood and atmosphere, and what I'm going to do from a colour story start, we're going to use Purple Lake and Cobalt Blue, and then also mix up a weak wash of yellow ochre. I'm going to start with the Purple Lake and the Cobalt Blue on the sky and bring that into the distant buildings, and then I'm going to use the yellow ochre to really give the whole picture an overwash, but making sure that I leave off the highlights, the really strong highlights, and I'm going to bring that down from the buildings into the street scene as well, so it just sets the mood and the temperature of the painting. Now I'm looking into the light, so everything's slightly out of focus. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to let it thoroughly dry. I'm going to now mix in a stronger brick type colour, which is going to be burnt sienna, cobalt blue, with a little bit of burnt umber in there, just to give that, and a bit of cadmium red as well, just to give it a dark, and drop that in. Start with the buildings on the left, bring that down, add a further dark for the really strong shadows on the left hand side, and I'm also going to do the similar to the buildings on the right hand side and bring those in, putting them onto a moist surface so that the colours will granulate and give that feeling of texture. And it's the sort of first step at creating a bit of definition into the buildings. I've now going to continue this process. Of the shop on the right hand side has got quite a green frontage. I'm going to use cobalt turquoise with a little bit of raw umber. I'm going to drop that in to give that sort of green sense to it, but also it's going to diffuse and you're going to see that yellow ochre coming through, which is important. Just drop that in. So I'm blocking in these colours. I'm now going to go into the distance and start working forward from the distance. I'm going to start by putting in some of the darks into the buildings in the far distance, using the mix that I had at the top, which has got the Purple Lake and the burnt sienna and such like. Use those colours and drop in and start building in the darks. And as I come forward, I'm going to reinforce that brick colour for the buildings by adding some more ultramarine blue and cadmium red with a little bit of burnt sienna in there as well, just to sort of give that further feel of depth to those stone. And I'm also going to reinforce the shadows again, so I'm just building it up still on that damp surface, but it's just creating that feeling of mood and atmosphere and texture. And I repeat the same process for the buildings on the right hand side now by intensifying the darks, dropping them in, letting them diffuse to the underwash and give a little bit of shape and texture. So I'm finding some lost and found edges on the shop front and in the buildings. And the texturing will also help develop that feeling of brickwork in the upper building. Now once I've covered that, I'm going to let that dry. Now once I've let it thoroughly dry, I'm now going to come back in, start in the distance and work my way forward by adding depth and darks into the place. I'm starting in the distance with a purple effective distant colour, and then as I come forward I'm going to get stronger with the darks. Now to accompany the darks as I come forward, I'm also going to drop in some cobalt blue into the windows just to capture that secondary light, and it just gives that extra feeling of glazing and highlight to the windows. And now just reinforcing the buildings, giving them another layer of brick colour and just letting that diffuse, and it'll just give some further depth. Also, while that sort of colour's going in, I'm going to drop little bits of blue here and there and just let that diffuse together. And just this diffusion alongside the darks will help set that feeling of mood and that feeling of shadow. Now I'm working my way along the street scene with the greys, and as I come into the figures, what I'm going to do here, each of the figures have got like a silhouette around them that gives that feeling of light hitting them and just cascading through. So I just want to carefully drop greys in that give that feeling of figure with the silhouette, and just be careful to do that. Alongside that, I'm going to put the street, I'm going to put some bags and a few seats that are around the umbrella area, ensuring that I can also drop in some darks to give them some extra depth and density and just set the scene in place. And now I'm going to come back to some of the windows in the building. They're going to be important because they're going to capture the light. So what I'm using there, I'm using a grey and I'm also using a cobalt blue in neat. I'm going to drop them in and then I'm going to hold the shape but also diffuse together, and it will just give the extra feeling of light coming through the windows. I'm now doing the same silhouette effect with the distant figures. This time I'm just using a little bit more purple in them, just so that they're in the distance. But again, I'm dropping in some dark into them as well. So just carefully giving the impression of the figures. I'm also giving the impression of some of the distant darks and shadows. Now I'm gradually working from left to right, so I'm working onto the right hand side of the buildings, and those I'm going to again drop in some deeper darks just to give some shape and pick out some of the elements that are just in shadow. And as I come further forward, I'm now back into that green shop, and I'm going to drop in some darker green shapes into there, just carefully picking out some of the windows, carefully picking out just the light and the dark. So I'm just picking out the shadows and just cascade it in, drop it in and let it diffuse. I'm going to continue the process of dropping in dark shadows. I'm now working on the building again, higher up on the left hand, on the right hand side, dropping in those shapes. Also, as well as adding blue shadows, I'm also adding some bit more red in there, so you get that little bit of diffusion and that variety of shadow. So it's not just one shadow, it's a range of colours in there, but trying to make sure that the tone is quite strong and dark. Okay, so we'll now let the building settle and diffuse. I'm going to concentrate on the street itself and the foreground. I'm going to mix up some more yellow ochre and then just drop that in, keeping it paler in the distance, but dropping a stronger wash and bringing that forward so we get a little bit more variety and tonal range in the street. Now I've added a little bit of alizarin crimson into the yellow ochre just to help give a little bit of shape and texture to the street, just dropping that in and letting it diffuse. Once again, I'm now going to build up the last of the buildings, which is the one on the left hand side, which is a shop front and a little bit of a building above. And I'm going to use cobalt blue, strong, for the actual shop front, and then I'm using burnt sienna for the actual shop window and dropping some darks and just let that gently diffuse together. Now we're moving to the figures and the umbrella. I'm going to drop in some greys into the figures just to give them some shape. Once again, protecting the silhouette area so it just gives that feeling of light on them. And I'm also going to give a little bit of colour into the umbrella, particularly the underside, just to give that little bit of warmth and also some shadow on the top. Now it's just a case of overall just looking at the picture and adding further depth into the shadows and carefully adding some shape and structure. So once again, just following on, we're going to add some more shape and shadows and details. Now I'm once again looking at the buildings, adding some more depth to the shadows. I'm also reinforcing some of the greys with a little bit of neutral tint to give that extra sort of punch to the shadows in the windows. Also adding some further detail to the windows, just generally pulling out that little bit of extra shape now. Okay, so now we've let everything dry, and I'm now going to start putting a little bit of shape to the cobblestones, just giving that little bit of highlights and lowlights, just to pull out a little bit of shape to the street, ensuring that I'm following the lines, to making sure that we got that perspective with the cobbles, so that they converge into the centre of the painting. Now we come to the big moment where we're going to really give that feeling of shape and shadow to the street. It really brings in the light that we're coming through the figures. What we're going to do is mix up the greys that we've already got on the palette, trying to ensure that we have a little bit more paler in the distance, and then bring them forward with a little bit more depth and body to the shadow in the foreground, making sure we get that distinct brush strokes that follow the shape of the shadows, follow the shape of the street. Also, as they go into the distance, I'm just going to add a little bit of water so they diffuse a little bit, so they're not as sharp in the distance as they are in the foreground. Once I've put them in, I'm then going to get a little bit more grey, pick out a little bit, drop that in, just to give that feeling of diffusion and shape and shadow and depth to the shadows. This is where it really comes to life. We're just going to drop some further greys and shadows and colours into those shadows and just let them diffuse and just let them dry on their own. The magic of watercolour, they will blend, diffuse and create that extra energy into the morning scene. Now I've let that dry, and then I come back once again, just add some final touches into the flags just to give them extra shape, and that's the completed picture. Okay, so there we have it, the finished picture. Once again, I put a frame around it, slightly different one from the normal one, but nonetheless, I like to think we've caught what we're after. We're after that winter light, that low sun looking into the light, by doing those simple steps of painting the diffuse background washes, then building up into the detail. We've really caught something, and I think you'll like it, and I think you'll enjoy it. But remember, those steps require breaks in between to let it dry. Don't rush and do too much in one go. And if you follow the steps, you can get something really effective. So, hope you've enjoyed that. Also, a big thank you to you all, because we've just reached 11,000 subscribers, which is a massive achievement. We've had this channel for just over a year, and the response and the comments and everything has been overwhelming. It's been fantastic to see so many people interested in watercolour. And you know what I'm going to ask now? If you want to sort of get out to more watercolour, don't forget to like and subscribe. It gets us picked up by a wider audience. Also, if you're enjoying these videos and you really want to develop your skills, as I said previously, we've got our online watercolour course, which has got a plan. It's got all the steps that's needed to take you through watercolour, and it will follow brush by brush, so you won't miss a thing. You'll see everything, and you'll be able to see how we create the magic and the inspiration that needs to sort of take you through to get the best out of watercolour. And with this course, you get lifetime access, so you can really hone in and develop your skills at your own pace and your own time. And as I say, if you really want to take your skills further, this course is available and it's in the link below. And in the meantime, I hope you enjoy and keep painting.